NDTV Profit.
Greetings to all our viewers. You are watching India Inc.'s Dream Budget, a show that gives you a roundup of what the industry is expecting out of the Finance Minister Pranab Mukherjee and what exactly are the troubles that they are looking for a resolution to. This is a show that is focusing on real estate this afternoon, and it's going to be getting you the biggest voices in the industry to tell you what exactly is the wish list of the real estate industry. Just to give you a backdrop, the key word right now is urbanization, which leads to the country's development and growth and survival. Real estate as a sector is a key trigger for this very development and growth. However, the sad part here is that it's plagued with problems of its own, high interest rate, as well as the discriminatory treatment vetted out to it, though it contributes almost 78% in terms of GDP contribution to every rupee that has been invested in this sector. Today, I have two such veterans, two such contributors to growth who are joining me on the show, Mr. Adi Godrej as well as Mr. Vikas Oberoi. None of them need any introduction. Along with them, I've got Mr. Gautam Mehra as well. He's the Executive Director of Tax and Regulatory Services at PwC India. Let me start off first with you, Mr. Godrej. While many do believe that the budget is a mere statement of accounts, nothing much should be expected from an industry standpoint. But things are different this year, and a lot has been expected out of the Finance Minister outside the scope of the budget and from an industry point of view as well.
Well, the budget has two important roles. One is in the budget speech the Finance Minister makes. He does set out what the government plans are for the economy over the next year to a certain extent. And then, of course, there are the budget provisions, the various statement of accounts, the various new provisions they wish to bring in taxation, etc. Now, this is a great opportunity for the Finance Minister to perk up the sentiment of the country. Unfortunately, the economic sentiment, the consumer sentiment has been poor over the last 6 months, and it is very important that the Finance Minister does make statements, does provide policy decisions that will lead to a stronger sense of confidence in the economy. And unless we are able to accelerate our GDP growth, we will not be able to put in place all the social programs the current ruling UPA wishes to bring in, because there just won't be the resources. So it's extremely important. Now, I feel it can be done. It can be done very strongly, but the government needs to take some decisions. The most important decision in my mind for the budget would be to set out how the goods and services tax is to be implemented. The Finance Minister must be able to tell us that he will have a GST in the next 6 months, because the GST is the one reform that will add tremendously to GDP growth. In my mind, about 1.5 to 2 percentage points are the things being
That is the key issue in terms of the overall tax structure, as well as the interplay of GST and local levies need to be adequately addressed. Vikas, I want to bring it to you now. There are various aspects of real estate, that needs some bit of, reference to. Commercial real estate, residential real estate need a boost, particularly growth areas in Tier 2 and Tier 3 as well. Tier 2, Tier 3 cities is what I'm focusing on, and you need government initiative there.
Divina, I agree with Mr. Adi Godrej first, that we need tax reforms as far as the GST goes. But I also feel that the Finance Minister is grappling with inflation. He's, so what he's really done is he's actually taken the interest rate up. But that really would not help the industry per se. I clearly believe that if one wants to control inflation, one will need to look at the supply side. So my thrust here would be that Finance Minister has a stick and a carrot with him. All he has to do is make sure that the state governments who are looking at any sort of viability gap funding from the center will have to toe the line. He has to tell them that they need to bring in reforms as far as property tax goes. They need to increase the housing stock. we cannot solve the housing problem by increasing interest rates. And yes, I mean, we live in an inflationary economy, but that does not mean by pushing costs up, we are going to deter people from buying homes. And the other big thing is that even if you create blockages for funds to come into real estate, let's say the RBI comes up with its norms, you will find other money is coming into this industry. This money will be from people who don't have the sector knowledge, who will probably be driven by the greed that this industry has to offer. If interest rates in this industry are higher, people will find ways and means to deploy their investments here. So I guess, if he can simply address the supply, and this could be done at the back of incentives that the state government gets out of the central government. We need to have single window clearances, we need to have township policies in states clear, and he can clearly do that. Like I said, that he has a stick and a carrot. He could simply tell the state government that I'm not giving you any help unless you come back with these reforms. They have done that, but they haven't put any timelines for it. ULC did get abolished because the central government took initiative, and they tied that up at the back of the funding that these guys give. So I would say he should do that. Today he needs to come clean with the GST policy itself, because this itself will help contractors, suppliers to get credit, and so crystallization. And we are in the court fighting it out for policy clarification. If that can be addressed, I think we'll be on a good track.
Right. Mr. Godrej, there is obviously the anticipation that what could be done this time around is the interest deduction of 1,50,000 on house loans should be increased in tandem, keeping in mind how inflation has moved and the high interest rate regimes. Also, the focus now is that the mid to lower, housing residential units are in heavy demand, particularly in tier 1 and tier 2 cities. But the supply is in shortfall because developers don't want to go ahead with it because of this shrinking margins that they have and a larger economies of scale. You think the government could probably do something on that front to address the need, at least at these lower levels?
It's difficult to say what the government will do, but I think they clearly should. You're right, they should increase the interest deduction for income tax purposes against housing interest paid. And I agree with Vikas that the Reserve Bank needs to bring the rates down, mortgage rates need to come down. I think the most important thing the finance minister could do is to mention the importance of housing to the economy. Now, this is one of the biggest business sectors in the economy. All the value added in housing and other real estate development is basically value added in India. It doesn't have much imported goods content. The need for housing is very strong. Both the social and economic benefits from increased housing are tremendous. I think the finance minister should pay a lot of stress in saying that he would like policy reforms in this area. Our current policies, especially in residential housing, are very poor. The time frame to get permissions is excessively long. Getting projects through is difficult. And some of the inflation in this sector comes through lack of adequate supply at a low cost. It's no use projects going on for years and years, interest costs rise, etc., which adds to the cost of a project. So I feel there's a lot of reform required, and the finance minister might do well to stress that this is a sector the government would like to see reformed in the near future.
And rightfully so, because this is a sector that is going to be leading growth from the front. I'll come back to the policy issues, but just want to get in Gautam on the tax side expectations for real estate. Gautam.
Yeah, sure. So, as was mentioned, I think the budget is kind of into two parts. One is the policy initiatives and the other is the fine print around taxation. I think one of the things you really mentioned about increasing the limits of the interest reduction from 1.5 lakhs to 3 lakhs. I think we have to view that in the context of the larger tax reforms. And we're all waiting to see what's the progress on the direct tax code. And our sense is that if that is progressing on the side, I mean, it's quite difficult to expect that to be rolled out in April 2012. But if there's a game plan to roll it out shortly, then our expectation is that there may not be too many amendments in the current tax law, and the government may then want to, follow a policy of more of a status quo and taking all the changes when the new tax code comes in. So that's one interesting dimension or perspective around it. And apart from that, obviously, we do have tax benefits for the slum rehabilitation schemes, etc. When you started the show talking of urbanization and increasing the level of infrastructure, one important aspect of this also is redevelopment of old dilapidated structures. There is nothing in tax laws to really incentivize it. One of the key things obviously is approvals, permissions, as Mr. Oberoi also referred to. But on the back of that, I think another important aspect of that is also could something be given even in terms of tax breaks for reconstruction of old dilapidated buildings, especially in urban centers. Stamp duties, yes, again, a state subject, and there'll have to be some push and drive. Let's see how that pans out.
Vikas, you feel that it's important to simplify taxation issues here for the real estate sector, probably rationalization of the overall indirect taxes that you're paying so that there's no repeat payment in terms of values and taxes, which has always been a gray area for the industry.
Absolutely. I think our industry is trying to ask in bits and pieces. With the kind of finance minister we have, we should expect sweeping changes, This is a time when actually, India can truly shine. And if we really bring in reforms at the real estate level, this can probably, really be the engine for the rest of the industry growth. So I would clearly say that even these, from 150,000 rupees interest to 300,000, it is a very small step. I mean, I think the entire interest should be treated as a expense. That is one, we would want to say. And, housing is a need for everybody. Look at like our foreclosures. There has been, the Indian buyer, the home buyer has been very disciplined. We haven't seen any housing bubble or any major, in fact, any default as far as home loans go. If there is, some discipline required, it is more towards the real estate developer per se. So I would say, why punish the customer? Today, people write their biggest check in buying a house. And, so I would say that if the government is not providing the house, they might as well do something where they encourage the industry to do that. So I would say, go for the maximum. It should not be just, a bit here and a bit there. And, we are like one year away from an election budget. So I guess this is where the government should show they can perform and, really impress people.
Oh, that's a very exhaustive wish list so far. We've got lots more to discuss with Vikas Oberoi, Adi Godrej and Gautam Mehra on the other side, taking a short break and coming right back. Welcome back. You're watching India Inc.'s Dream Budget. Today in the spotlight is the real estate sector, and I'm in conversation with Vikas Oberoi, Adi Godrej and Gautam Mehra to discuss the industry wish list. Mr. Godrej, the industry for itself does want to provide all that it can, but they're also faced with headwinds. We've highlighted a few of them: higher interest burden. Again, the other fact is that the liquidity and the support that you're getting from the banking system in terms of, providing liquidity. Do you believe that, giving and promoting and the development of REITs right now will provide the necessary steps to infuse the liquidity that's required?
Yes, I think everything should be liberalized. Liquidity clearly needs to be improved. I think the Reserve Bank needs to start cutting repo rates, reverse repo rates and CRR rates on a regular basis over the next 9 to 12 months. That will help real estate development very considerably. The mortgage rates have become excessively high, which has created a negative sentiment also among potential buyers of housing, that it is better to wait until mortgage rates come down.
Mr. Godrej, how important or how big will it be to increase the allocation to the Rajiv Awas Yojana?
I think that's it's the urbanization plans must be supported. I think we should make sure, of course, that they are used efficiently. I think once this Aadhaar UID scheme is brought in, both in terms of individual direction of funds can be more efficient, and the government should set up some system to monitor that the states use it efficiently. And I've found that most of the states that have received these funds have done a good job of it, and this should be encouraged.
The other drawback which we just spoke about was a single clearance window, and Vikas, you pointed that out. You know, how much of a drag is this, you know, that there is not a regulator, you know, to make sure things function smoothly, and just an intention from the finance minister, you know, to probably have an outlook on setting such a regulator up that will have a smooth flow will be a big boost.
See, we as a company are in for a regulator, as in we vote for it. And when you ask me the drag, it's huge. Government has to make sure that they create a level playing field. They also need to make sure that you know, approvals come in time. At one end, you are increasing the interest rate. The other end, you know, approvals don't come in time. All this costs a lot of money, and this is directly going to be passed on to the buyer. And at the end of the day, we are in effect helping inflation. You know, so I guess if you have a level playing field, if you have your rules clear, if a single window clearance is in place, then, you know, we are able to churn out a lot more, a lot faster. The efficiency that we will end up building will actually be passed on to a customer. Because today, every developer is looking at affordability also. Affordability at every level. I'm not talking about affordable housing. Even in a luxury segment, there's a level at which people can afford something.
Gautam, you have a view on the same, as in what we've been talking about in terms of clearances and...
Yeah, 2 points. You know, one on the mention about REITs, definitely. This is something which has been going along since I've been hearing about REITs for the past, I think, 6 to 8 years at least. I see 2 clear advantages in this. One is getting a more educated investor base and acting as an intermediary channel to funnel that capital into this industry. I think the quality of the capital which comes into the industry will by itself also act as a trigger to, you know, just raising the bar across the board. And secondly, this is an industry which requires capital. I think REITs also acts as a good exit mode for some of the larger investors which come in, because as of now there's very limited, you know, modes of exit. So by and large, I think REITs does carry these big advantages. It will also provide, you know, an opportunity for smaller players to, you know, come into this field. I fully agree on the point of regulations. I just, you know, we just need to be very mindful that it doesn't convert into regulations for the sake of, you know, just putting in something into the bar. And I think Mr. Oberoi very correctly put it. It's about having someone on the ground there who's really taking care of things rather than just increasing the levels of, you know, paperwork or bureaucracy. That's the only, you know, viewpoint perspective I had on that.
Coming back, you know, you spoke about giving an exit option to investors. Mr. Godrej, do you believe that the real estate industry at a point at which it has an investor-friendly environment?
Well, I'd like to first talk about the matter on the regulatory issues.
Sure.
I don't, just single window is not enough. It must be time-bound clearance. If plans are not cleared with a certain period of time, to my mind, the maximum period should be 3 months, they should be deemed to have been cleared. And I think it is very important that government, municipalities, etc., are told to follow that. If they have any questions, if they want to get any clarification, it must be done within that 3-month period. And sorry, what was your other question?
I was asking you about real estate. Is it actually an investor-friendly sector, considering that we're talking about FDI and real estate, and there are also various hurdles of investors seeking an exit option?
Well, there should be. I think FDI and real estate should be opened up. I don't see why it should be only for X and only for Y, etc. I think it should be opened up. Just as I feel FDI in many other areas should be opened up. Why should the government keep putting restrictions on FDI?
Vikas, you want to comment on that?
Yeah. You know, I agree with Mr. Godrej. This is probably the best industry one can look at from investor point of view. And the best part is you don't even consider that as an investment. It's as an expense. You consider this as an investment. I mean, a lady of the house will probably, you know, agree to defer buying jewelry, if you've just bought a house and you have interest or loan repayment to be done, you postpone buying a car when you actually end up buying a house because you want to repay that. So I guess this is probably the most prudent investment one does.
You think it would help also if restrictions on end use of external commercial borrowings are somewhat relaxed?
Again, I would say that, we are talking about REIT, we are talking about foreign currency loans, and here we, on our, for access to monies, RBI is actually continuing to restrict use of money into the industry. So I really don't know, whether this is a right idea. At the end of the day, if you are really wanting to curtail inflation, your first act has to be to increase supply. And on the back of that, you can probably then start having FCBs, you can start having, REITs, and so on and so forth. Increasing supply of cash in our industry by not increasing supply of land would actually be, counterproductive, I would say. So of course, all these are welcome, but they should be welcomed at the back of some more supply, some more clarity in rules and regulations. Otherwise, there is a chance of a mismatch, which is what I'm really worried about, So I'm not against that at all. In fact, I'm advocating both of them, but this should be done at the back of increase in supply.
Mr. Godrej, completely running out of time, but two-part question. One is a long-standing request to get an industry status granted, and the second is obviously the differential that you see for real estate projects, which is not considered as infrastructure only if it is used for building tolls, highways. That's the time when you get the benefit and the tax benefits. Aside of that, none of the other projects gets the benefits. What is your stance on the fact that, and why exactly is the government holding back to give it an industry status?
I think generally government should announce that housing, especially housing, is going to be a priority area, and they should work around this both on the regulatory framework as well as the tax framework. And I agree, mortgages should be deductible to a much higher extent. Not this 1.5 lakhs a year is far too inadequate. It must be increased. And I think this giving this status and that status is not very important. What must be very important is that both the central government and the state government should be committed to facilitating the industry.
But this, if you do get an industry status, you do get access to good funds as well, long-term, short-term funds, that paves the way for it.
Yes, but I think people, even borrowing is not the only way to fund. People could fund it with equity, people could fund it with foreign investment. There are many other ways of funding it. I think if the facilitation of the industry is much more important than the funding part. All
right. We're completely out of time here. Very interesting discussion, and that was the wish list and expectations from the real estate sector from Vikas Oberoi, Adi Godrej, and Gautam Mehra, who joined us on the tax front. Gentlemen, thank you so very much. It was a pleasure discussing the wish list with you all. That's it from my end. Thanks a lot for watching.
I think if you see the recent report from the Planning Commission, it says that the investment on the healthcare spent by the government should need to increase to 2.5 to 3%.
There's been a little bit of a to and fro in terms of what's allowed as R&D and for weighted deduction and what's not allowed for R&D and weighted deduction, and some of the court cases are now beginning to litigate.
Coming on the tax side, you're absolutely right. I think this industry probably suffers the most on ambiguity on taxes. R&D is one.